got this very interesting statistic which is making the rounds on Twitter and is becoming quite viral. And it shows that, according to Pew Research data, 56% of liberal white women between the age of 18 and 29 have been diagnosed with a medical health condition. And this is not just something that the person itself claims that they have. No, like they went to an actual professional and they said that, okay, well, the science is in. We have concluded that you have mental health. And obviously, it is a bit concerning. I mean, this would show that at least 1 in 2 women between the age of 18 and 29 who happen to be white in the United States are suffering from mental health. And of course, there can be many reasons for this. The first one is creating new mental health issues that didn't exist before by the scientific community. So what I mean by this is that in Romania, when I went to med school, a mental illness was something that impairs your ability to function in a society. So for instance, masturbation, okay, like that is normal, everyone does it. But if you do it so often that you are late for work, that you're incapable of finding a significant other, well, then you have a problem, right? So then it becomes something that you need to seek help in order to regain under control. It becomes a mental health issue. The same thing with hearing things that aren't there, right? So auditory illusions. Almost everyone happens to have them at least once a year. You think that someone called your name. You think that you heard the phone ringing. Like once it can happen. But if it were to happen every single day, if it were to happen constantly, well, then you may be schizophrenic, right? So like that was the classical way of interpreting what a mental health issue is. But now anything can be a mental health issue. And a very interesting point is this provided by Mr. Rob Henderson, which talks about in the 19th century how Japanese medical students went to Western countries and learned about neurasthenia. So neurasthenia was what they considered to be fatigued from a person that's too intellectual, that's too mentally stimulating. And these Japanese, then they went back into their country and started diagnosing people en masse with a medical illness that up until that point wasn't considered as such. So as you can see, around the Meiji Restoration, when everyone was obsessed with how great foreign stuff was, Japanese medical students went to Germany, learned psychiatry, came back to Japan, and told everyone that they were neurasthenic. Being neurasthenic became at first a fashion, then a class marker, and the idea was that neurasthenics were people who were working too hard. They were good, admirable, and who were smart and doing so much furious intellectual activity, it was straining on the nerves, right? So this may be one reason why the number of mental health can actually go up. People find it fashionable. I remember when Twitter started, and this was also something that happened on Tumblr, before people had pronouns in the bio, they had mental illnesses in the bio. I don't know how many of you remember, but this was actually very well documented. Like you would have people that were left-leaning, and they would say that they are suffering from ADHD, they're suffering from autism, they're suffering from bipolar disorder, they're suffering from like all these other issues. And the reason they would do it was like a class marker. Like basically, the idea was that they get to act like a twat on the internet and be a dick to other people. But if you try to be a dick in return to them, the public would say like, dude, he's got autism. Like, why are you being so mean? Why are you being so cruel? Why are you responding to him? Why are you taking him seriously? Right? So this was a tactic, a strategy. And I also remember that back then, those people didn't want to get a medical a medical checkup. Because they would say, like, why would a doctor know better than my lived experiences? Like, I know I have autism. I'm not going to go to a doctor, right? So, the idea of people identifying as having mental illnesses for other reasons than that of them getting treatment and getting the situation under control definitely exists. I would also say that another reason for this is that in the United States, there is a financial interest. There are market forces which actually do try to get people under medication. So what happens is that this is a way you can get drugs legally, and many people have discovered this, that, well, if they're feeling a little bit depressed, if they're feeling a little bit gloomy, instead of trying to exercise, instead of trying to work out, instead of trying to change their standard of living, which is very difficult to do, they can go to a psychiatrist, tell them that they have the gloomies, they can go on the internet, they can research the symptoms. I know many people who do. And all of a sudden, you get pills. You get the happy pill, which, Romanian doctors are looking horrified at this practice that is happening in the United States, more so than I would say in other parts of the world. But it would be another factor, right? So, like, all these people that want to get pills, like, they will go to a psychiatrist and they will get diagnosed. Someone who does not go to a psychiatrist will not get diagnosed and therefore will not be in this percentage. Finally, as we notice, it does seem to correlate strongly with ideology. Is there a possibility that the ideology makes people feel desperate and miserable? I would definitely say it does. I mean, modern American left-leaning ideology is a very depressing worldview. The idea that the country is systemically racist, inherently sexist, misogynistic, and you have like the patriarchy, this evil shadowy cabal that's trying to control people and is bringing upon like oppression onto minorities and is doing it covertly, and right, like it's a very depressing worldview to have, because like everyone is trying their best in order to make other humans miserable. Yeah, I mean, like the rich, the wealthy, they're pumping the wealth, they're destroying the environment, they're destroying the planet, the future is bleak, it's horrible, Armageddon is coming. I mean, imagine living in a life like that. So yeah, I can definitely see why a lot of people who think this ideology, who believe in this, would definitely be a lot more depressed, a lot more under stress. I can't imagine how it's like to live a life within this mindset. And if you're constantly worried about it, yeah, I can definitely see that they would be suffering from depression. They would seek psychiatric help. And then they would go into the chart. And finally, why does it affect women more than men? I would assume it has a little bit to do with how often people are willing to go to a psychiatrist. It's possible that men do not feel the need, like they have different way of dealing with stress, usually through physical activity. So they don't feel the need to talk about the issue as much. Like I, as a man, when I am stressed, I just want to play video games. I just want to be alone. I calm myself down. And that's helpful for me. Like I feel good. I know other people, sometimes women, they want to talk about it. Like they want to discuss things over. They want to share things. So when that happens, well, a psychologist, for example, could be someone that they go to. Especially a conservative is more likely to go to a priest or to a man of faith when they have issues, right? So they do this act of confession. And that's how they feel liberated. They feel lightened. But a person who is an atheist, which happens to coincide a lot more with people on the left, would probably seek a psychologist. And that psychologist might give them pills. And would also put them under this chart of people getting diagnosed with whatever. I have looked a little bit at the way American psychologists diagnose people, and I do not think that there is a single person on earth that they would consider healthy. In fact, I don't even think that the concept of healthy even exists to them. Like, they call it neurodivergent, right? So, I think like any person that goes to an American psychologist is going to be diagnosed with some shit. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. And of course, it depends on the psychologist. But I would be really interested in seeing if anyone goes to a psychologist with some problems, with some issues, if he's not going to get some ADHD, bipolar, like something like that. High-functioning autism or whatever. I mean, like, when you look at the scales and the definition, they encompass so much that it's very difficult for a person to be claimed, well, I don't have any mental illness whatsoever. Right? So this may also be another problem. Like the moment you visit a psychologist, the chances of you getting diagnosed are quite high. But take into account that if you were to visit a psychologist in another country, or you were to visit a psychologist 30 years ago, you wouldn't be diagnosed, right? Like now it's just like more definitions, more symptoms, more stuff like that. So that could also play an important role. That's my take on it, because a lot of people ask me, it's like, why is it so high? That's what I think. So let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.